Imagine standing at a checkout counter, holding out your card, only to realize the cashier's hands are trembling so violently she can hardly keep the scanner steady. You watch a young woman struggling to breathe, struggling to stand, struggling to pretend she's fine when everything in her body screams otherwise, until the truth she finally whispers destroys everything you thought you knew about courage, fear, and the cost of silence. Stay with me because what happened next will stay with you long after the story ends. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and people standing up for one another, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Loom so we can continue spreading these stories to the world. It was late evening in a quiet neighborhood grocery store just outside Tacoma, Washington. Only a handful of customers wandered the aisles, filling their baskets with last-minute meals and half-forgotten essentials. In one of the slower checkout lines stood Marcus Hale, a 38-year-old single father who had learned to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders with the kind of quiet strength you only earn through loss. Beside him, clutching a box of her favorite strawberry cereal like a priceless treasure, was his 8-year-old son, Noah, a boy whose gentle smile softened every hard edge life had carved into Marcus over the years. As they stepped forward, Marcus finally noticed the cashier, a young woman, no older than 23 or 24. Her name tag said Lena, but it wasn't her name that caught his attention. It was her hands. They shook uncontrollably. Not from the cold, not from exhaustion, no. This was the kind of trembling born from fear, the kind that lives deep in the bones. Marcus placed his groceries on the belt and watched Lena fumble with the scanner, her fingers missing the buttons again and again. He could see the panic building behind her eyes, the kind of panic he had witnessed countless times during his 15 years as an EMT before stepping away to raise Noah alone. He knew what real fear looked like. He was looking at it now. Though she tried to force a polite smile, her eyes darted again and again toward the glass-walled office on the far side of the store. Every time she glanced there, the shaking worsened. Marcus knew that kind of dread. He'd once lived it. He wanted to ask, but he didn't want to embarrass her. So he waited. But halfway to the exit, something inside him snapped. An instinct, a memory, a sense of responsibility he couldn't shake. He turned around just in time to see Lena lean heavily against the counter, trying to steady herself. And that was when the store manager, a thick-set man with a permanent scowl carved into his face, stormed out of his office and hissed something sharp and vicious under his breath. Lena flinched like she'd been struck. That was all Marcus needed. He walked back and waited until the customer ahead of him had moved on. Then, quietly, he asked her if she was okay. For a second, she looked like she might collapse. Her voice came out in a whisper so faint he barely heard it. She didn't want to talk. She said it was nothing. She said she was fine. Marcus had heard those lies from too many people who were hurting, so he stayed. He didn't push her, but he didn't leave either. And eventually her resolve cracked. Her eyes filled. Her fingers dug into the counter. And she whispered the words she'd been carrying alone for 6 unbearable months. "It's him. He harasses me," she explained in broken, apologetic fragments. How the manager cornered her, how he made comments, how he brushed against her, how he cut her hours when she asked him to stop, how she couldn't afford to lose this job, how her rent was already past due, how she felt trapped in a nightmare no one else seemed to notice. Marcus felt something inside him ignite. A heat, a certainty. Promise. He didn't confront the manager right there. Not with Noah beside him. Not with Lena trembling. Instead, he walked Noah to the car, called his sister for help, and returned alone. Determined, steady, and ready to do what she couldn't. The store was quieter now. Lena stood at her register with a smile so fragile it looked like it might shatter if someone breathed too loudly. When Marcus approached, her face paled instantly. She begged him not to get involved. She was terrified of losing her job. Terrified no one would believe her. Terrified of making things worse. Marcus spoke to her the way he used to speak to victims in moments when they thought they were alone in their pain. He told her fear didn't define her. That courage wasn't loud, but it was powerful. That she deserved safety, respect, dignity, and most importantly, that she wasn't alone anymore. With trembling hands, Lena finally agreed. Together, They walked to the break room, and Marcus stood beside her while she called the company's HR department. Her voice shook as she described everything. She named the manager. She explained the retaliation, and Marcus watched pride begin to replace fear in her eyes as she spoke. When they walked out, the manager saw them and demanded to know what was going on. Lena stood straighter than Marcus had ever seen her stand. Her voice was unsteady, but strong enough to change the course of her life. She told him she'd reported him, told him she wasn't afraid anymore, told him his power over her was gone. Marcus didn't need to say much. He simply stepped forward, tall and calm, and said enough with the look in his eyes. A promise that if the manager so much as thought about hurting her again, he'd have far more than an HR investigation to worry about. A few days later, Lena called to tell Marcus the company had suspended the manager pending a full investigation. They offered her extra hours at a different location. A fresh start. A safe start. When Marcus hung up, Noah, who had overheard just enough, asked if the lady was okay now. Marcus scooped his son into his arms and told him yes, that she was brave, that she stood up for herself, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is simply ask someone if they're okay, and then stay long enough to help them through the answer. If this story touched your heart or reminded you how powerful compassion can be, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Loom so we can continue spreading light where it's needed most. Before we end, I'd love for you to comment below. Kindness makes us stronger. Sometimes the world doesn't change in one big moment. Sometimes it changes in a grocery store aisle because one person refused to walk away.